All right. You guys wanted a budget version. I get it. Calm down. I made one. Hot damn. I made one. Now, granted, as some of you may have known, those who watch my stream, my current iteration of my build is about 250 to 300 divines. I got my stasis prison. I got the good jewels. It's a powerhouse, but also very expensive. Now, the budget version won't have most of these things, but it's a lot cheaper. It will still have a lot of speed permanently. It will have a lot of tankiness. It will still have the phenomenal explosions in clear, but it won't have the same power in single target as, of course, the main build. And the incredible survivability that we get from full recoup is also gone. We are solving some of these things in ways that are a lot cheaper and have different strengths and different benefits. But of course, concessions must be made if you are working at a much lower budget. All right, so let's get into it. One of the questions you probably have is, what is the actual budget of this build? And, well, the number is not nice. It's 50 divines. I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but Forbidden Rite is not a gentle skill. And also, the actual main build that I have right now, especially with the holy grail of upgrades, the Stasis Prison, that particular build has turned into a 250 to 300 divines monster. And the prices are climbing, so I'm just gaining more value by doing nothing. Now, 50 divines in comparison sounds a lot cheaper, does it not? So it's all relative. You could make the budget even lower if you're making more concessions. I am, however, not willing to do so. I am not willing to carve into the well-rounded aspect of this build, but you could. If you're just using it for clear, if you're just using it for bosses, you can tweak it even further, or perhaps you don't mind to have a little bit more speed, less speed, or a little less tankiness because you think you have an abundance of it. And we do. We are very quick. We are very tanky. We have incredible clear still on this budget, considering the build and the skill we are using. And we still have decent single target DPS. I have seen people kill Ubers with less, so I know it's possible. People have shown it to me that they are doing it with this build specifically too. So you can go out there and pop off. There's a couple of notes here that will address some basic information like basis. Evasion is probably the recommended course. Some things that people get very confused about, like balance of terror, is why do we need that for the wither stacks. We also have some gems we will address as a result of that. And for those who are wondering, you don't need Stasis Prison. There is a budget version. Progenesis is, however, mandatory. And that thing has been becoming more and more expensive. So don't even try this if you don't have a Progenesis. That thing is busted. Anyway, let's get through the armor, the gear, and of course the passive tree. So here is the passive tree for the budget version. I have capped it out at level 90, as most people reach the level 90s, low 90s, as opposed to high 90s. So giving you a bit of a more realistic tree for most folk. But if you can get past level 90, know that every single point is a victory. Not because it's difficult to level, because it's really not. You are very tanky, very fast, and you have good clear. You're going to level past 90 if you are enjoying the build. It's just going to happen, trust me. But every point you do get has so much value. You're going to feel victorious when you get it. There's so many ways you can round out this build. Having more points is just wonderful. So try to push past level 90 if you can. You're going to love it. Now, let's start with the Ascendancy itself, the Pathfinder. This is the spec you want to take if you are not using a Stasis Prison. The Master Surgeon is going to be too important for your sustainability with flasks, as well as allowing you to cycle faster in single target combat due to the gained flask charges when you deal critical strike, as well as providing you with much needed bleeding, but more importantly, corrupted blood answers. You don't have immunity because the jewels you would need are too expensive to afford, even on the Abyssal Jewel, but you won't need it if you use the spec because you are cycling so quickly anyway. Corrupted blood won't be up longer on you for like more than a second. So don't fret too much. And the recovery of life is really, really nice. The Nature's Adrenaline is just a travel note. You get a little bit more movement speed out of it, so gotta go fast. Of course, Nature's Boon is the important one here. This allows you to get those flask charges, and we are seeking to make our flask uptime permanent. And it's fairly easy to do as a result of Nature's Boon, although Dying Sun is a little stubborn at times, depending on your role. And we also have Master Toxicist because it's just really nice proliferation, as well as some additional damage during Flask Effect, which of course is for us always. That should speak for itself. The passive tree did have to make a little bit of, had to make a bit of a cut here and there on some life notes. We were also missing another medium cluster for additional AoE and quality of life, but nonetheless, it still worked out quite lovely. So let's start at the beginning. You pick up some additional life notes here, as well as the primal spirit for some much needed stats, which also allows you to travel into the minor node, which is ironically the more important one, which gives you more flask increased effect. And we are scaling that to maximize the benefits of our unique flasks. Pick up Charisma. Also, the Reservation Mastery is a lot of damage since we have Haste and Val Haste. We want a Brutal Restraint, Balbala, and if you do search for one, at the very least, seek to gain not one, but 2 increased flask charges gained nodes on the Brutal Restraint. Aside from that, anything that's useful is wanted. Inflict poison faster is a premium. Beyond that, the ones I can think of is just increased chaos damage or increased poison damage, as well as non-curse aura effect is really nice. I think you can even get like movement speed or other beneficials, because things like crit don't really do a whole lot. It's a little nicer to have a bit more crit because of Master Surgeon, but honestly, you shouldn't hunt it down. This is practically a dead benefit. What isn't dead is some more life here, as well as the Chaos Wheel with the Mastery for lots of Chaos Multi. Incredible wheel. More flasks. Speaks for itself. We are scaling flask. This is a flask wheel. We take it. Spell Suppression. We do pick up the Spell Suppression Mastery. In combination with the Shield Craft we have, just a bench craft of Spell Suppress, we are able to cap our Spell Suppress so we don't have to spec these 3 nodes right here. So we save 2 points. Aside from that, we also have a Jewel Socket for an Abyssal Jewel. Some more life, more flask gain and duration, as well as more life. Life is a big part of the game because it skills our defenses phenomenally, but also a little bit our damage due to the way Forbidden Rite works. Now, as you can see here, we have a bit of a weird cluster because we're not having 3 notables, as it is a budget build. We do have, however, Unspeakable Gifts and Unwavering Evil. You need at least one Unwavering Evil note because it allows you to get a quote-unquote stun protection. We also have Unspeakable Gifts for that clear. We're using a Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh Jewel that is quite cheap, the way of the Poacher, but you can also just run any rare jewel there, so don't worry about that. Fatal Toxins, just phenomenal damage, as well as Poison Mastery. Inflict poisons faster, especially when you are using Temporal Change as a curse. Phenomenal. Also a little bit more poison chance, because that will help us cap out our poison chance to 100%, which is necessary. More life. Can't go wrong with that. Jewel Sockets. Can't go wrong with that. We also have just a basic 3 modded Jewel Socket. Nothing too fancy. Just life, recoup, and then a damage mod. There's a couple of damage mods. Chaos damage over time, however, is the best one. And I found them to be quite cheap, all things considered. More life notes. Mostly travel until we hit the poison wheel right here. Lots of damage. As well as a mandatory chance to poison. These 2 nodes here are not mandatory for travel, but they are the highest, some of the highest damage nodes we can get at this point. So taking them is still advised. We take the Curse Wheel. Whispers of Doom allows us to apply that second curse, and so we are using 2, Despair as well as Whispers. And then we have our final large cluster right here. Again, Unspeakable Gifts, which allows us to clear nicely. Touch of Cruelty is a little bit more damage. You could also go for Wicked Pal, or maybe even just another Unwavering Evil. Anything that will increase your damage is nice. But the Unspeakable Gifts is the big one, as well as a mandatory medium cluster. with Spiked Concoction. This will give you the very important and mandatory Alchemist Genius constantly, as well as a little bit more life. You can also replace this with Brewed for Potency or Fasting, but that is up to you, and depending on how your flasks run out, or don't run out, I suppose. Got a Balance of Terrajewel. This is our source of Wither. We are hardcasting a Special Despair in our link. We'll go through that in just a second. And we also have a Watcher's Eye, which is mandatory because we do need that Vitality mod to get that on-hit healing, as well as preferably a Purity of Elements, physical to element damage mod as well. In this case, we have Fire. Cold is also preferred, if not more preferred. But lightning should be avoided. It's the least effective. It's still good, but it's the least effective. And that's pretty much the passive tree. Now, a good interesting thing is that once you start leveling up, you can round out the life. You can pick up perhaps, Curse Mastery right here for some crit protection. There's more life on the tree right here, down there. You can also, since we have Way of the Poacher, which gives us the 4 max frenzy charges in pretty much all situations, you can maybe even spec a little bit more into max frenzy charges, get a bit more damage, as well as more cast speed. There's a couple of things you can do. You can even save up enough points to maybe do another medium cluster. Maybe some more AoE, maybe another alchemist based one where you can get brute potency and fasting on a separate cluster to round out your flask situations. You have options. The FAQ that I am setting apart for the big video, the big reveal, is going to have all the answers to that. But I imagine you are smart enough to fit the puzzle pieces together. Alright, so let's get through the most important part of building a character like this, which is the gear itself. Now, most of these pieces of gear, I actually have a crafting video on my YouTube channel, which will give you a play-to-play. So if it seems very intimidating, don't worry about it. I can help you step by step on those videos. You should check them out. So let's just start at the top and work our way through. The carving knife is one such important tool, which is very, perhaps, overwhelming to look at. But the reality is that it's a simple rune dagger with a fractured chaos damage over time multiplier. It seems to be slightly bugged out right now. And then you just slam your cast speed essences until you hit tier 1 damage with poison or damage over time. And then it's simply locking those suffixes, re-rolling or reforging with chaos, and then you have the guaranteed chaos spell skill gem, and you finish with the benchcraft. Sounds very overwhelming. The video has the play-by-play. If you know what I just said, you know how to craft it. You don't even have to get tier 1 fractured chaos damage over time multiplier. You could settle for tier 2. It's a lot cheaper, and you lose minimal damage. Because the difference between, a couple of percentage of chaos damage over time multiplier when you're dealing with a budget is worth a sacrifice to make, because typically it can save you several divines. The shield here is the same spiel, so to speak. Fractured chaos spell skill. They're not too expensive. You slam greed essences for life until you also have hybrid life, which gives you this wonderful life amount. You lock those prefixes. You do a chaos unveil, or the veiled chaos trick. Do a bit of a block craft, unveil, increased effective curses. It's a very high chance to hit. Out of the 5 times I tried, I've only missed once. And then you spell suppress craft to get yourself spell suppress capped. As you can see, we are 1% over. So we have a little bit of wiggle room, very little. The helmet is incredibly easy. The only trick is to find a relevant purity of elements enchantment on the base to get the mana cost down. Alternatively, malevolence should also work. Anything that we have a big aura, because we do need a little bit of mana. And finding a base with the enchant, like an evasion base with the enchant, is easier than getting a level 3 or level 4 enlighten. So this is the unfortunate necessary enchantment, which might be tricky. But beyond that, getting a decent amount of stats on it is not difficult, because it's only a little bit of life, some resistance, chaos, or otherwise, depending on how you are crafting it. Spell suppress is the important one, and then of course a bench craft. So it's 4 mods. One of them is crafted. One of them can be a fracture. It should be pretty easy to put together. Double ganger. This is the important piece that makes everything work in terms of defenses. It has to be perfectly rolled. Anything lower than 40% and you're going to feel it. You can also find some really nice double corrupted ones. If you might get lucky, you can get max life on it, or even max res, I think I've seen. There's some really good double corruptions on there, but I will trust your judgment for your own build on that. Gloves, another one of those 4 mods. One of them is a benchcraft, one of them is a fracture. Just put them together. Whatever works. The only thing that's mandatory, of course, is the spell suppress, as well as finding enough resistances on your gear to get everything capped. The boots, same thing. Resistance, spell suppress, life, movement speed. You can even turn this into an onslaught boot, which would be the perfect tool to have permanent onslaught as well, which is going to feel really, really good. Unfortunately, these pair of boots have one mandatory thing as opposed to the craft, which is the enchantment. You need the enchantment to be mana neutral, to have no cost on your Forbidden Rite. So you need to find an evasion or an evasion hybrid base with that enchantment. Mind you, if you don't have a fractured spell suppress on it, it's going to be trickier to get that on a hybrid as opposed to a pure evasion base. Now, I've got a pure evasion base, and it doesn't matter because we're not scaling any armor. Armor doesn't do much for us. Getting more evasion might actually make us tankier because we have a little bit of evasion scaling on our tree. And we also have the occasional Jade Flask for bosses. So just find yourself a nice pair of boots with that enchantment and you're good to go with the craft. The amulet, this is very difficult to price because there are so many different mods that could be useful. Just make sure the Searing Exarch mod is dominant. This way you have the Culling Strike. And look for things such as duration of ailments, effect of your curses, increased effect of non-curse auras, chaos multi. I think I've seen movement speed, max res. I've even seen somebody use a +1 curse, which might even allow you to respec some points on the tree. Just find what is good. Find 2 implicits that work for your tree. Make sure they're decently rolled stats because they really help out and are mandatory to fix your stat attributes and requirements, and also get the Culling Strike, which is a lot of damage. Now, these particular rings, once again, look very intimidating. They're incredibly easy to craft. I have a guide for it as well, but just know, Recoup Fracture, I believe it's Zeal Essence Slam until you have a nice tier 1 suffix you want to use. Lock the suffixes, Veiled Chaos, block with the Mana Craft, Unveil Life, and then craft on it the non-channeling skills. Before you, however, craft, make sure you put the fertilizer on it, the Catalyst Fertile, because they will scale your max life implicit, as well as your flat life, as well as your total mana cost, which is how we get -8, because it's actually a -7 boosted by the catalysts. Once again, crafting guide on the YouTube channel. Same thing with the ring too. Whatever implicit you hit is going to be the one you're going to have to use, or whatever you need, you have to seek after. But I will see what comes out of that when you are done crafting, because we also have to craft this belt. Now, this one is ridiculously easy. You can literally just Chaos Slam this. Like, it's not even a joke. Like, you can just Chaos Slam this until you hit it. I've seen people sell this for like a couple of Chaos on the trade. You can maybe just outright buy it. But yeah, all we're looking for is a tier 1 reduced flask charges used, or a tier 1 increased flask charges used. The reasons for that should be obvious, considering we want to keep uptime on our flasks. And then, of course, we want to seek to increase those flasks. And we're looking for that tier 1 flasks applied to you have increased effect. And then we just craft some flat life on it. If you hit natural life on it when you're trying to put this together, even better. Maybe you find some resistances. Maybe you find some attributes. Even better. You have so many mods available to you because I've reduced it all down to the bare minimum. You have a lot of wiggle room. What you don't have a lot of wiggle room in is Progenesis. Mandatory. Can't escape it. I'm sorry. Taste of Hate. Too valuable for the defenses. Can't escape it. I'm sorry. Alchemist Quicksilver is all the speed we have because we're juicing it up. And the Flask of the Order craft is mandatory. The reduced mana cost is necessary. I'm sorry. Dying Sun could temporarily be reduced to not be used. And you can use a regular ruby flask. It has to be ruby. And then you can put a craft on it. I decided to put a Order craft on it for the regen to help out survivability. But other than that, yeah, the trick is to get to a point in your build where you can use Dying Sun permanently. I would recommend making the enchantment reused at the end of the flask effect, unlike the other flasks, which will be able to use used when charges reach full, because it allows the Dying Sun to regenerate the full extent of its duration to get all the flask charges. On top of that, you have to make sure it's a good rolled one. It's tricky, but you want to get the least amount of duration possible and the least amount of charges used to give you the best chances to making this thing be up permanently. That's the trick. That's one of the big puzzles you have to solve in this particular build. Aside from that, Forbidden Flame Jewels, Way of the Poacher is the best one for on a budget. If it, however, skyrockets in price, or you don't want to use a Forbidden Flame or Flesh, make sure to use rare jewels. Get some basic life, maybe something along the lines of these ones. Increase life, recoup, really strong, and then a damage mod. 1 or 2 that you can find. Chaos damage over time would be the most preferred one. The medium clusters, we have gone over them. Spike Concoction is mandatory peak figure. As you can see, there's no attributes or resistances on this, so you can maybe even slam some additional skills on it or stats on it to help you out. Same thing with the large 2 clusters. Make sure you have unspeakable gifts on both, and that one of them at least has Unwavering Evil. Beyond that, it doesn't really matter what's on there. Touch of Cruelty could be nice to have once. Although, since we have Withering, it doesn't scale too hard. Speaking of Withering, make sure you have the Corruption Anoint. Very important. Wicked Pal is a good alternative for a 3rd note, or instead of Touch of Cruelty or Unwavering Evil. But, yeah, don't want to give up on at least having 1 Unwavering Evil because of the stun protection. That's the Forbidden Jewel again. Brutal Restraint. We already went over that. Balbala. Balance of Terror. Already went over that. That gives us the Wither. We have a Searching Eye Jewel. Basic stuff. Just phasing. Life. Damage over time. Just mostly here for that phasing. If you are doing bossing, you could just get another rare jewel. You don't need another Abyssal Jewel. Mostly just here for the phasing. It feels too nice when you're mapping. And of course, to finish it off, we have the actual rare jewel that we are using. Chaos damage over time, increased max life, damage taken recouped as life. And of course the Watcher's Eye, but we already went over that too. So it should speak all for itself. Now, there's a couple of answers to certain questions, but I am building a large FAQ for the final video on the build, the super build version. It's turning out to be a bit of an essay. But in the meantime, you can put your questions in the comment section or just join the Discord. We have a channel for Path of Exile. You can ask questions there. A lot of smart people, even smarter than me, are hanging out there, and they might help you on your way. Having that said, thank you all so much for hanging out. Hope this helps. Go forth, and I will see you guys next time. I'm out.